You know, some time ago, John Canary gave me a little piece of literature about getting out of the comfort zone that was written by Bob Riggs in southern Florida. And there's some excellent information in here. Many of us are pretty comfortable in our life. We've got a reasonably good income. The mortgage is paid. There's food in the fridge. We've got a nice warm bed to sleep in. And everything seems to be floating along just fine. And you know, a person in that position could very easily think, why would I want to do anything to change this? Well, we have found that if your life is not going in one direction, it absolutely, by law, must be moving in another direction. And Riggs is talking about that here. He said many of us have established a comfort zone in our lives. We're just coasting along, taking the line of least resistance, just getting by. Now, he said this is a very common and understandable attitude. We've all worked hard to get to where we are, and it may seem a very good place to be. The problem with this is that once we stop reaching, stretching, seeking, and risking, we actually stop growing. Now, Riggs goes on to say that the comfort zone frame of mind is settling for what we are today. That may be fine today, but without continued growth, and I believe this is the key line coming up, we are now all we are ever going to be. Now, for me, that would be a fairly disturbing thought. He went on to say, if you're in a comfort zone, beware. The danger of a comfort zone is that it doesn't hurt, and it might even feel good. Many take that to mean it's a good place to be, but it's not. A comfort zone may be what is holding you back from real growth, real accomplishment, and your potentially exciting and rewarding future. Now, I've mentioned if we're not going in one direction, we must by law be going in another direction. You're either creating or you're disintegrating. Whenever we hear a person say, I like it just the way it is, we know that person is advertising their ignorance of a very basic law of life, because absolutely nothing stays the way it is. Now, if you'll take a look at the top of page 2, there is a concept there by Sidney Herbert Wood, and it's the test of an educated person. I think many of us have had a false concept programmed into our mind with respect to education. We, I think, have been raised to believe that education is going to school for a certain number of years and be able to correctly answer a series of questions. But you know, many people will go to school all their life and be able to correctly answer the questions, but then when it comes to getting out into the marketplace and really making it happen, they just don't know how to compete. Many are withdrawn. They don't even feel comfortable meeting or greeting a stranger. Well, Wood said the test of an educated person is, can I entertain a new idea? Now, I think you know, and I know, that if we're going to improve, we have to have a very open mind. I once heard that an open mind was being prepared to throw away some of our most cherished beliefs when a better idea comes along. Now, you'll find that the vast majority of people seems to back into the future, dragging all of their old experience with them. When they're confronted with a new idea, they ask, does it fit? If it doesn't, then they say it's wrong. Now, what we want to do is ask ourselves, would this new idea improve the quality of my life, or would it get me going in the other direction? Can I entertain a new idea? Today and tomorrow, you're going to be asked to entertain many new ideas, but every one of the ideas that we're going to share with you are going to be positive, they're going to be creative, they're going to be constructive, and they'll definitely improve the quality of your life. Then we see the second one, can I entertain another person? Now, there's many people that would feel totally uncomfortable walking up to a stranger and just saying, hi, how are you today? Pleased to meet you, Jan. Now, do you know some people, when it comes to meeting a person, their head is down, their hand is wet, they're shaking inside, their heart is pounding, and they only do it because they really have to. They would just as soon pull away from the new person. Now, that individual has not learned very much, if anything, about themselves, because we should feel totally comfortable meeting anyone, anywhere, at any time. And then he asks, can I entertain myself? Well, you know, many people are not able to entertain themselves. I spent half my life not being able to entertain myself. I always had to be around someone else. It was always, come on, let's have a party. I absolutely hated being alone. And that was because I really didn't like myself. Now, I have found through studying the ideas that we're going to cover here over the next couple of days, we can develop into very interesting and reasoning companions. Most of the time that we live, we do spend with ourselves. And you're going to find that some of the very best conversations you ever have are going to be with yourself. I get so excited about some of mine, I talk right out loud. That draws, a strange look from people from time to time, but you get such great ideas going in your mind that you just can't help it. Now, here in the first paragraph, we say that this program, You Were Born Rich, is based on the premise that you have rich resources lying dormant within you. I have heard many people laugh when they take a look at our program or take a look at the title of the book, Born Rich. You see, they think that means that you've been born into great wealth. Some people are, but some people are not. But everyone, without exception, has been born with tremendous resources lying within them. We've got deep reservoirs of talent and ability. And through following right rules and natural laws, we're going to find that we can draw that potential to the surface and we can bring it to bear, and it will cause the manifestation of prosperity in our material world. Now, in almost all the seminars that either John or myself does, we take and we put an R here in the board. Now, what I would like to suggest you do is you let that R represent the results that you're getting in your life. Now, there's three areas that we're going to suggest that you focus on. One is happiness, one is health, and another one is material wealth. Now, when I first started to study this material, I was not happy, I was not healthy, and I definitely was not wealthy. I had a chap sit down with me, and he saw something in me that I obviously wasn't capable of seeing in myself. His name was Raymond Stanford, Raymond Douglas Stanford. In fact, I named my son after him, Raymond Douglas Proctor. And Ray looked at me and he said, Bob, let this here represent results that you're getting in your life. Then he asked me if I thought he was a happy person, and I said, yeah, thought he was. He said, have you ever seen me sick? And I had to admit I hadn't. He said, have you ever seen me when I was broke? And again I had to admit I hadn't. Well, he proceeded to tell me that he thought I was one of the most miserable people he had ever met. Well, and you know it was true. I was an unhappy human being. He said, you're always sick. Now, I didn't have a terminal illness, but I always had a headache or a cold or a backache or something. And he pointed at the area of money. He said, you're always broke. He said, you're forever trying to hit somebody up for a couple of dollars for gas. Now, if I was to put this in proper perspective for you, I was earning $4,000 a year at the time, and I owed $6,000. So you see, I wasn't really interested in being happy or healthy at the time. I figured if I could just get this money problem straightened out, everything was going to be great. He proceeded to tell me that there were certain laws governing happiness, and if you follow them, you can just keep getting happier and happier. That sounded a little foreign to me, but that was his opinion. And he pointed out that you and I have an ingenious system built within us to keep our body in excellent working order. And then when he talked about the area of money, he said, he said there's exact laws governing wealth. And he pointed out, he said, this stuff cannot talk, but it can hear. And he said, if you call it, it'll come. Well, I can assure you, I was ready to yell at the top of my lungs. I mean, if there was anything I wanted, it was some money. I figured it would take the heat off for a little while. Ray suggested that I go out and buy this book. It's Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. And he said there's a secret in this book. And he said if you can find the secret in the book, you can have anything you seriously want. Now, you take a person that's unhappy, not very healthy, is in debt, you'd have a difficult time accepting that. I was 26, and I just couldn't accept the idea. But as Ray said, your way's not working, why don't you try his? And that's what I'd like to suggest to you today. If you're not getting the results you want, your way obviously isn't working, why don't you try ours? Now, I often mention that John and I have got license to brag about every idea we use because none of them are ours. We don't claim that we've originated these ideas. In fact, we openly admit we haven't. We've just gathered them from books here and seminars there and great teachers all over the world. And what we've done is put them together in an organized, coherent manner. So if your way is not giving you the results you want, I would suggest that you take a real serious look at these ideas. Now, I looked for the secret and I couldn't find it, but I found in one place here, he said a peculiar thing about this secret is that those who once acquire it and use it find themselves literally swept on to success with but little effort, and they never again submit to failure. What a marvelous promise. He said, if you doubt this, study the names of those who have used it wherever they've been mentioned. Check their records for yourself and you'll be convinced. Now he lists upwards of 100 names here. He's got Henry Ford, William Wrigley, James J. Hill, George Eastman, Theodore Roosevelt. He goes on here, John D. Rockefeller, Thomas Edison, Luther Burbank, Woodrow Wilson. How could I relate to any of those people? I couldn't relate to them. But you see, in that first part, he said, check their names or check their records wherever they've been mentioned. So I did that. And I got out books on Edison, and I got books on Rockefeller, and I got books on Woodrow Wilson, and all the great people that he had mentioned here. And you know what I found? I found they were no different than you. They were no different than me. Many of them had very little formal education, which made me feel fairly comfortable because I didn't either. Many of them had very, very rough roads to start on. But I found out we were essentially all the same. Do you know what was different? The results they were getting. And as I studied on here further, in his chapter on persistence, and he mentions that persistence to the quality or to the character of the human being is like what carbon is to steel. He said the only thing that he could find in Edison or Ford that he never found in everyone else was persistence. They'd get a hold of an idea and they'd stick with that idea. And I look back in my own life and I never did that. I'd try something a couple of times, and if it was rough, I quit. I'd have people saying, oh, Bob, why don't you just give it up? I'd say, yeah, you're right, and I would. Now, you see, the people I was mixing with, they were losing too. I never stuck at anything. So I made up my mind, if I ever found this secret, I'd work it right until I died. Now, I did find the secret. It was in 100 different places in the book, and it was simply sit down, decide what you want, write it on a card, carry the card in your pocket, and read it as often as possible every day. Now, keep in mind, I was earning $4,000, I owed $6,000. I was sitting in a fire hall at the time, and I wrote on the card that I was going to have in my possession by New Year's Day of 1970, $25,000. Now, I wrote that on the card in 1960. You know, the idea of having $25,000, it was sort of a fantasy. I don't think there was $25,000 in the whole fire hall at the time. Now, I wrote that in the card in 1960, keep in mind. I gave myself a decade to pull this deal off. I really didn't believe it was going to happen. But I found out a couple of things. I found if you write a lie on a card and you read it often enough, you're going to start to believe it. And you know, William James, back around the turn of the century, he said, believe, and your belief will actually create the fact. Well, I did what he suggested. I read this card every day. I'd carry it around and I'd just keep reading it. And one day one of the guys in the fire hall got a hold of it and they pulled the card away and they passed it all around. Everybody started to laugh. Proctor's going to get rich. I had a chap in a seminar the other day that he said the same thing had happened to him. He was in a seminar and he got one of these gold cards and they passed it around at work and he said, everybody laughed at me, but he said, I'm winning. Now, I didn't read the card in front of anyone any longer, but I kept reading it. I'd go to the bathroom, and I'd sit in the toilet and lock the door, and I'd read the card. Or I'd be driving down the street, and I'd come to a traffic light, and I'd haul the card out, and I'd read it. Now, something very funny happened to me. 1 year later, I was earning $175,000 a year. Now, that's an enormous change, and it went well beyond $1 million in a year. Now, that was not supposed to happen. See, everything I'd been taught since I was a little boy indicated that if you don't go to school, you can't win. If you don't have business experience, you can't win. I had not gone to school. My second month in high school, they asked me to leave. I'll never forget how happy I was when they made that decision. Yeah. As I look back, they were probably much happier than I was when they made that decision. But here I was, I was 16, I had very little knowledge, I had absolutely no skills, and at the very best, my attitude was poor. What chance did I have? I really didn't have any, but I didn't know that. And so I just bummed around from job to job, in and out of the Navy, in and out of factories, in and out of bars, mostly in and out of bars, until I was 26. Here I was at 26 when Ray sat down with me I had very little knowledge, absolutely no skills, and my attitude had not improved greatly. But he introduced me to this idea, and I found that it doesn't matter what's happened in the past. You may not have a colorful background, and maybe you have. You may not have a lot of formal education, and maybe you have. But it really doesn't matter. If you've got a goal and you're willing to stick to it and study the laws, you're going to find out that you can win. Now, that was like an emotional impact, and I had to find out what happened to me. And so I made up my mind that someone had either written in a book or they were talking about it. And I made up my mind I'd read every book that was ever written if I had to. And I'm going to tell you, I have one of the finest libraries on personal development, psychology, the area of the mind that you're going to find anywhere. And I don't just mean library of books, I mean library of tapes and records. And I would travel anywhere in the world that I heard of a good seminar to find out more about myself. Find out more about you. Find out what makes us tick. And you know a strange thing? I found as I studied me, I understood you better. Because we are essentially all the same. And that's just sort of the way it works. This seminar is nothing but the culmination of all that study. But it wasn't just study, it was a lot of practice, a lot of painstaking study, and an awful lot of experience. And John and I have seen great changes take place in our own life, but better still, we've seen phenomenal changes take place in the lives of the thousands and countless thousands of people that have studied these seminars. We've done these seminars as far away as Takapuna, New Zealand. We've done them all over the United States, every state in the United States. And we've done them all across Canada. People in England are studying this right now. As a matter of fact, this book, Born Rich, is being read in Russia right now. That's a fair distance away from here, and it's a lot different philosophy than most people in that country are used to. Now, we point out here that material wealth is a normal and a natural state for you to live in. Intellectual comprehension, come down to the third paragraph on page 2. It's vitally important. Intellectual comprehension of this program is not difficult. In a relatively short period of time, you will be prepared to correctly answer a battery of questions about this Born Rich program. If you read it, memorize it, you can answer almost any question in it. But that doesn't mean that you're going to win. You could very quickly say, I know. Someone mentions something, we'll say, I know. I know somebody that says that all the time. Doesn't matter what you say to her. Vera says, I know. All right. Now, knowing and doing are poles apart. And I point out in 2 or 3 places in the book that reading and memorizing are not going to make you successful. It's the understanding and then the application of wise thoughts that count. You must understand the idea, and you must go out and act on the idea, regardless of how much your old program wants to hold you back. You've got to bust out of that shell and do the thing that you've got to do. Now, John Ruskin here gives us an excellent concept on education. He said, education does not mean teaching people what they do not know. It means teaching them, showing them, leading them to behave as they do not behave. Now, the compensation that you're going to receive for following the ideas that you're going to be studying for the next couple of days is absolutely incredible. I could do nothing but keep expressing great ideas when I talk about the good that can come to you. You can do anything you want. You can have anything you want by following these ideas. Now, I choose to believe that every one of you wants something. Way down deep inside of you is a dream. And every now and then that dream floats to the surface of your conscious mind. And when it does, you quickly push it out and you say, I can't do that. Now, the truth is you can, you just don't know how. And if you can get that straight in your mind, I'm going to tell you, you busted out. Now, Vernon Howard one time pointed out in a magnificent book, Mystic Path to Cosmic Power, you cannot escape from a prison if you don't know you're in one. You cannot escape from a prison if you don't know you're in one. Well, I think we're all in one to some degree. But that dream you've got that comes to your mind, I would suggest you look at it real carefully. I was given a cassette tape by a gentleman in a seminar that we were conducting a couple of years ago, and it was a copy of a speech made by a minister out of Minneapolis. And there were a couple of lines in that tape that were absolutely incredible. He said the saddest thing when he's officiating at a funeral is not the death of the body, but the death of all the dreams. It's that house you were going to build and never built. Maybe that car you were going to get, never got. That trip you were going to take and never took. The business you were going to start and build, but never did. Well, the saddest thing is not the death of the body, but it is the death of all the dreams. We've got to do what's inside of us. Let's not go to the grave with the music still in us. Now, as we go through this seminar, John's coming on in a minute to lead you through the part about proper use of the seminar. But as we go through it, understand this. If you do not direct all of the information you're going to hear towards a specific end, the information will probably be rendered useless. So, what I would suggest you do, as John's coming up here, just jot down in shorthand, in your book, anywhere on a blank space, that's something that you want. And look at the quote on the bottom of page 2. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "Do the thing, and you'll get the energy to do the thing." Do the thing, and you'll get the energy to do the thing. Don't wait. Start right now, whether you're ready or not. Just say, I'm going after it, I'm going to get it, and your present circumstance has got nothing to do with where you're going. Later on in the book here, you're going to find that there's a quote by a magnificent author. He said, your circumstances may be uncongenial right now, but they will not long remain so if you perceive an ideal and strive to reach it. Now think of that. You may not have much money. Your social life may be in a bit of a chaotic state. Maybe your business isn't going the way you'd really want it to go. He said, your circumstances may be uncongenial, but they will not long remain so if you perceive an ideal and strive to reach it.